Welcome to Glove Talk, your weekly news in boxing. New episodes every Sunday. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. With that said, let's talk boxing. All right, so we're going to start with the lightest guys and then go to the heavier big boys. Chocolatito talking about having a rematch with Estrada, having this at super flyweight, which I think is kind of a smart idea rather than going up to bantamweight. Going up to that bantamweight class is a little bit nerve-wracking for him, especially considering what's waiting for him there, which is Inoue, the monster from Japan. I just think that in general for him, he sees himself as kind of being complete with his career so far and not really needing to go up to that next weight class and trying to chase that belt at bantamweight. He's already a 4-weight class world champion. Does he really need to get that 5th? I don't think so. I think he's already kind of cemented himself as a first round Hall of Famer, especially with a record of 49 wins, only 2 losses on his record. I think for him, he feels pretty comfortable staying at this super flyweight weight, and I think that's pretty smart of him. Rigondeaux talking about how he's going to be pound for pound again and go to 118 and then come back up to 122 again. 118, you first have Inoue, like we just talked about, the monster, but the thing is, the lower you go in weight, granted the guys don't hit as hard, they do make up for that with volume punching. And with Rigondeaux being 39 years old, I mean, the stamina you need to have 1,000 punch fights is just unbelievable. And I just don't know if he can continue to do that at 39 years old. It's just a lot to ask for him. You can't really take anything away from Rigondeaux, especially his background, his amateur career. That being said, it feels as though his career as a professional is starting to wind down a little bit, and I think he's trying to find his place. I think for him, he's thinking maybe I go down to 118, maybe I disrupt it a little bit, and then I can come back up to 122. For me, I think he should just stay at 122. I don't think he needs to go chasing after Inoue, especially Inoue being in his prime and Rigondeaux being at the end of his career, really. You know, as they always say, the undisputed champion in boxing is Father Time. 1,000 punch kind of fights are absolutely insanely hard to do with the cardio that you need to do that, especially when you're at his age. So this is kind of some promising news, seeing some fights being talked about as early as June. Emmanuel Narate talking about, you know, possibly fighting. They haven't announced who the opponent actually would be, but it's just kind of nice to see that boxing might be coming back sooner than we expected. I think he's a great young fighter, so let's see what he can do and who he ends up matching up with. But for me, this is more about a sign of boxing starting to try to find its way to get back into our households, back in the limelight, and actually start kind of making pay-per-view fights again. I'll be very curious to see what he does and who he picks, but with that said, I'm more excited about the idea of just seeing fights again. Granted, if there's a crowd or not, I don't really care about that so much. I just want to see guys kind of fight. And it was actually interesting during the UFC 249, they were talking about this, that without the crowd and the crowd noise, you could actually hear more. And with some of these fighters, it'd be very interesting to see what that kind of sound like, see some of these fights without any kind of audience, without any kind of crowd noise. Now we're going to be going on to lightweight. Lightweight's pretty interesting right now, especially because some of the drama that's going on with social media, but also now what's happening in the gym. Devin Haney was getting trained by Floyd Mayweather in Las Vegas, and at first I thought, you know, that's not a bad idea. That's kind of good. I like to see Floyd Mayweather teaching and mentoring some of these young prospects, showing them things that he learned, especially from his uncle Roger, who passed away not too long ago. This really touched Floyd and made Floyd want to be a trainer, wanted him to kind of share his knowledge that his uncle taught him. Floyd doesn't need to do this. Floyd is a billionaire. Floyd has made his money. He could easily walk away from boxing. Floyd decides instead of doing that he wants to be involved in that. He wants to train these young prospects. As nice as it is that Floyd decided to help out Devin Haney, the truth of the matter is it's a little bit awkward considering he has Tank Davis in his stable. Tank Davis is under his promotion, is in the same weight class. Devin Haney's under Matchroom and just signed not too long ago with Eddie Hearns and everything like that. So I don't really understand why Floyd would take his time to teach a prospect that's possibly going to fight Tank Davis. If you don't understand why this is a big deal, essentially this is like coming home and seeing your dad playing catch with the neighbor kid right before a tryout for baseball. It just doesn't really make you feel all that good if you're Tank Davis. Tank Davis is trying to take over the lightweight division and trying to be a menace in that, and it really doesn't help when your promoter is showing a rival, someone else that you plan on fighting hopefully at some point, how to do a shoulder roll. And Tank Davis made sure to let us know that on social media, calling out Devin Haney and calling out Floyd Mayweather, saying that he'd fight both of them. It's just something that I don't feel like is a good situation for either party. I think that, Floyd needs to figure out what he's doing with Tank and really kind of figure out how he wants to guide Tank as a young prospect. And Tank really needs to figure out what he needs to do to keep his mind straight, because this is not helping him, especially right now when, everyone's social distancing. You can't really get into the gym the way you used to. Someone like a Tank Davis, he needs to be in the gym as much as possible. He does have the tendency to balloon up. He does have the tendency to kind of put on weight. He needs to find a way to kind of put this aside and not let things like this bother him if he can. Floyd, on the other hand, needs to stop playing mind games with guys that he's promoting. I don't understand why he's doing this. I'm glad to see Devin Haney getting the mentorship like this from Floyd Mayweather. I just wish it wasn't at the expense of Tank Davis. Speaking of Devin Haney, he talks about how he would love to fight Teofimo Lopez next. I think this is great. The thing I like about this is, you can say what you want about Devin Haney being gifted the WBC belt because Lomachenko was made the franchise champion. People are going to say that you got this belt gifted to you. If he went about this by fighting guys in the top 30 maybe, then I can understand why people would have a little bit more of an issue. But seeing him call out Teofimo Lopez, this tells me he wants to jump to the higher echelon of the lightweight division. And I think that's more appropriate, considering that if you're going to be champion, you need to be facing other prospects or other high ranking kind of guys. With Teofimo Lopez now being wrapped up with Lomachenko, most likely, especially considering that it was just announced that they're not going to be having interim fights, that they're just going to be fighting each other. This isn't exactly the right time for Devin Haney to say this. But at the same time, what happens after if Lopez loses? This is a great chance for Devin Haney to come in when Lopez is at his lowest, especially in confidence, and try to take advantage of that situation. Because if he does beat Teofimo Lopez, he kind of brings himself up to that next level above some of these other prospects. And with that said, we can kind of get a little bit of Teofimo Lopez's perspective on everything. Teofimo Lopez talking a lot of trash, especially on social media. Actually, all these guys are talking a lot of trash on social media, but I'm not really that surprised to see that Teofimo Lopez is talking so much. And I think we kind of know where he kind of gets some of this from, especially when you start seeing his dad make statements like this. Ugh, what to say about this? This just isn't really a very smart statement for Teofimo Lopez's dad to make, considering it's not hard for people to rewind the Comey fight and really get a good look at it. Now, going into the fight, I thought, like I said on the previous episode, in episode 1, that I thought Comey was going to try to box Lopez a little bit more, because if you look at the stats, Comey has a 3-inch reach advantage on Teofimo Lopez. So you'd think he would kind of utilize that to his advantage, but the problem is Comey has a bad tendency to get in the pocket. He has a real habit of getting in the pocket against other fighters, especially when he has a reach advantage. Those two things combined really led to him getting knocked out. So I don't really understand why Teofimo Lopez's dad would be saying that Lomachenko is going to be easier, considering that he fights in the pocket. Let's put this in perspective. You're fighting against a guy that is a 2-time gold medalist who almost had a perfect record of 400 fights as an amateur and is a 3-weight world champion. Yeah, I think he's comfortable fighting in the pocket. I'm pretty sure he knows exactly what he's doing there. From here, we're going to go to middleweight, and we're going to start with women's middleweight, and that's Clarissa Shield talking about returning back in August. I can't wait to see this. She's so close to unifying all the belts for women's middleweight, and quite frankly, she's probably one of the most exciting women's boxers right now. The thing that I always feel bad about when it comes to Clarissa Shield is that she just doesn't have great dance partners, especially at her weight class. It's kind of forcing her to think about going up in weight. That's why you start seeing all these kind of claims about her fighting Amanda Nunes from MMA and the UFC, is because neither one of them really has a great dance partner, and it's just because they're both dominating in their field and in their sport. Would it be interesting to see them fight? Kind of. I mean, Amanda Nunes has a very different background. At the same time, I just want someone to come along, hopefully, that Clarissa Shields can really create some buzz for her, because I think that sometimes when you start seeing some of the gates and some of the ticket numbers for women's boxing in general, it's a little bit disheartening when you have such great talent sometimes there. Now we're going to be moving on to men's middleweight. Eddie Hearn's talking about how he wants Sanders and Canelo to fight this summer, and for once we actually have a general agreement about this kind of stuff. Canelo's is also eyeing this up and how he wants to fight Sanders in the summer and then maybe fight Triple G in December. I think it's great to have Canelo fight twice this year, considering most of the time he fights on Cinco de Mayo. That's his kind of staple. For him to kind of lose out on that early spring fight, it's nice to hear that we're going to be reassured that we're going to get 2 Canelo fights this year. This really makes a lot of sense when you think about it, especially for Canelo, considering that he got the contract from DAZN. Eddie Hearns is pushing DAZN obviously and works with DAZN, so this really is a nice pairing. Sanders is very confident going into the fight. Sanders is always confident, but I think Sanders might be a little bit too confident going into this fight. Canelo is a different kind of animal compared to anyone that Sanders has fought. Sanders looks really good in his past fights, especially against David Lemieux, but that's different. That's him at 160 in his prime. Right now, Sanders has really been unimpressive to me, especially at 168. I just don't feel like he's taking everything as serious as he should. I think he relies too much on his instincts and his slickness to get him by every single fight. He just doesn't have power, like we all know, but at the same time, that slickness, it's eventually not going to work. Or you go up against a guy like Canelo who doesn't care how slick you are. They're just going to work your body until eventually you don't have that kind of slickness anymore. I really don't see Sanders being able to avoid Canelo, especially Canelo's body work. If I'm Canelo, I'm going to immediately start working Sanders' body, slow him down. And once you do, you don't really have to worry about taking a shot from Sanders, especially Canelo. Canelo's got a great chin on him. He's not going to worry about taking a shot from Sanders. So if Sanders can't be slick and outpoint Canelo in this fight, I don't really see how he wins, because if Canelo can take punches from Triple G and take them right on the chin and walk right through some of Triple G's punches, I don't see how Sanders is going to be able to really affect Canelo enough to really stop him or slow him down that would stop him from coming forward the entire fight. What he does best is work that body and then eventually make you pay with headshots. I just see Sanders getting beat down in this fight. I don't really see Sanders being able to win. I think that it's a great fight overall, because we need to see kind of Sanders step up his game, because he hasn't really had any good fights. Well, he was going to have the Andrade fight, but he failed with the PED testing through VADA. So with that, we'll see where it goes. Going to super middleweight, Danny Jacobs eyeing up the fight with Callum Smith. I think we all kind of want to see Callum Smith and Danny Jacobs really pair off. They're kind of the best two at this weight class for each other to fight. Besides, if someone like a Canelo decides to come up there and try to disrupt things a little bit more. There has been talks about Canelo going up and fighting Callum Smith, but I think right now he's more focused on fighting Billy Joe Saunders. Billy Joe Saunders has also been up at super middleweight a little bit. I would like to see Billy Joe Saunders more down at the 160 range. I just really think that Billy Joe Saunders being at 160 is him at his best. I also think he's the most effective at that weight class. Now, with that said, let's move to heavyweights. Andy Ruiz has been posting on social media him kind of working out and doing various things at his own home during this time of social distancing and with gyms shut down. I don't know if he's doing this purely for his fans or if he's trying to kind of prove to his camp with Eddie Reynoso and Canelo that he is serious about training and being champion again. I think after the AJ rematch, he really felt like he let himself down and his fans, and I think he is trying to get in a better place, in a better shape overall. I really want to see him get down a little bit. I want to see him get closer maybe to that 250, 240 weight where he was when he first came a heavyweight and became a professional. I think with him putting the added weight on, I know he talks about having added power and kind of preferring that a little bit, but honestly, I think that it slows him down and that he needs to have a little bit faster feet. I think he kind of needs to work in the kind of model a little bit closer to kind of a Povetkin, so to speak, a guy that's smaller but knows how to really counter big heavyweights with their jab and everything like that. I think for Andy, this is great that he's trying to stay active, trying to stay in shape, but really the question with Andy is how consistent can he stay and for how long can he stay that way? Now, after Andy Ruiz, we're going to go across the pond and talk about Joe Joyce's manager coming out, talking about knocking off Daniel Dubois and then going after Jarrell Miller. I think that this is a great idea, especially if he is able to do that. That said, I think Daniel Dubois, in my opinion, is the better heavyweight. I kind of prefer Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois is young. He's very naturally large. I mean, he's very quick for his size, and he's not super robotic, where Joe Joyce is much older. He got to box into boxing later, and I just don't enjoy watching Joe Joyce fight all that much. He's just very robotic. He's very slow. He might be one of the slowest heavyweights I've seen fight in a while, and I just don't think that he's going to be able to knock off Daniel Dubois. I think Daniel Dubois is just too young, too strong, and I really think that Daniel Dubois is going to find a way to break down Joe Joyce eventually in this fight. Regardless of who you have winning, I think this is a little bit more of a true 50-50 fight, which anytime you have a fight that's like that, it makes it a little bit more enjoyable because you just don't know who's going to win. Speaking of British fighters now, we're going to go to Chisora saying that he thinks he's better than Dillian White and that he's going to push for another rematch. I don't think that Dillian White wants anything to do with this. Dillian White's been waiting for the WBC mandatory fight for a long time now, for years now, and I think he's totally focused on that. And what kind of tells you that is that when you start seeing things like Dillian White talking about basically sparring Tyson Fury and being able to handle him and knock him down and everything like that, Dillian White sure doesn't want to let another year go by and waste more time waiting for this chance to be a WBC mandatory. So I think that for him, he's trying to kind of goat Tyson Fury into a fight. As much as you can try to do that, I don't think it's going to be effective because, as we all know, Tyson Fury immediately kind of came out and was like, look, mandatory or not, I'm getting to unify all these belts, and the AJ fight is way more important. So wait your turn. It's going to take some time, and he'll probably have to wait until 2022, to be honest with you. So while we're on the topic about the WBC belt, we see that Bob Arum's talking now about how the third fight between Wilder and Fury is not going to be in the United States or the UK. It's going to be abroad. I think after the AJ Ruiz rematch and how much money that brought in, having it in Saudi Arabia, I think all the promoters are a little bit more intrigued by this. I don't mind fighters making more money and promoters making more money, especially if it means that the fighters do get a bigger slice of the pie. Problem I have with this is that essentially you take these fighters that have been fighting for years in their home countries and put them somewhere else for some of their biggest fights. I think the people that really lose out on this are the fans, people that have been watching these fighters since they were amateurs and going through the ranks and then eventually becoming prospects as heavyweights. And now here they are, they're at the pinnacle of their career possibly, and they don't get to go there and see it live. They have to watch it on pay-per-view or they have to stream it online through DAZN. I just think that you're kind of robbing these fans of this amazing moment. Instead of seeing it live in person, they have to watch it through a screen. It's just a little bit disappointing in that sense. Like I said, as long as the fighters are making more money, I guess I can kind of live with it. I just wish there was a better compromise overall. Now going from WBC, we're going to move over to the other belts and we're going to talk about Pulev fighting Joshua. And basically Pulev said to Joshua that I am not stepping aside and that you're going to have to either fight me or you're going to have to vacate the belts. I don't think Joshua's going to vacate the belts. I think that he wants to unify everything, and I'm sure Eddie Hearns wants him to unify everything. So I think he is going to take this Pulev fight. I think that Pulev basically is putting his foot down. This could be just a strategy for him to make more money. Pretty much a tactic to say, look, I'm not happy with what you offered me for step aside money. So unless you give me more money, you're going to have to fight me or vacate the belts. I think this could just be a whole tactic when it comes to negotiation, but we'll find out. So going from the young guns, now we're going to go to the veterans. Mike Tyson getting called out by Ken Shamrock and Tito Ortiz. I don't really know why these MMA guys are so interested in fighting Mike Tyson. Actually, I do know why. They're very interested in getting some of that money that's going around or being talked about, I'm sure, for fighting Mike Tyson. And Mike is really just focused on kind of sticking with what he's already talked about, which is kind of a Vander Holyfield. At the same time, everyone's kind of talking about who he's going to fight, if they could fight him, and who wants to fight him. And so with that being said, Dave Allen kind of got wrapped up in this whole thing and kind of got swept up in the media storm that is Mike Tyson right now. To be clear about this, Dave Allen's not talking about fighting a prime Mike Tyson. He's talking about fighting a 53-year-old Mike Tyson. And if that's the case, that he could beat Mike Tyson at this current age, that he doesn't want to see Mike Tyson fight real heavyweights, that he wants him to basically live as the icon that he is. Basically, Dave Allen saying like, look, you had your time, you are this amazing boxer, but you're 53 years old and I don't want to see you get hurt, because if I can beat you, then there's other guys in this division that definitely can beat you. So finally, the last story I kind of want to use to wrap up everything. Mike Tyson is kind of talking about the fact that he really believes that him and Evander could raise a lot of money with this exhibition fight if they put it on together. This goes back to kind of what I said in episode 1, where Evander Holyfield talked about doing these exhibitions purely for charity. If anything, I think that this kind of shows where both of them are at. I'm glad to see Mike kind of mention this because, like I said in the first one, I thought that Mike might just get a little bit too competitive and not have fun with it and not make it about really anything other than trying to get back into a real competitive mode. Seeing that they're doing this and they're probably going to do this for charity, they're probably going to raise a lot of money, especially considering both these guys came from very impoverished areas and came from a rough background. I'm sure they're going to give to really great causes, and anytime boxers can help out these areas that they come from or other people in need, it really is a great thing. So with that said, I think we're going to end it there, leave it on a very positive note. And if you enjoyed this, make sure to like and subscribe. Next episode will be next Sunday. Thanks.